You wake up every morning feeling like you've been hit by a truck. Your alarm goes off, and instead of energy, there's this heavy weight pressing down on your chest. You drag yourself through the day, counting hours, until you can collapse back into bed. And everyone around you has the same answer. You're tired. You need more sleep. Maybe some vitamins. Perhaps a vacation. But what if I told you something that might completely shift how you see your exhaustion? What if the problem isn't that you're tired at all? What if you're just living in a way that drains every ounce of life from your soul, and your body is simply responding to that disconnection? There's something most people never realize about human energy. We think of it like a phone battery that just needs charging. Sleep 8 hours, eat some food, maybe drink some coffee, and boom, you should be good to go. But human energy doesn't work that way. It's not just physical fuel. It's tied to something much deeper. Something that has everything to do with how aligned your life is with who you actually are. You see, there are people who work 12-hour days and still have energy to play with their kids, pursue hobbies, stay up talking with friends. And then there are people who sleep 10 hours a night, have minimal responsibilities, and still feel completely drained by noon. The difference isn't stamina. It's not genetics. It's not even health, though that plays a part. The difference is whether they're living in harmony with their authentic self or fighting against it every single day. Think about the last time you felt truly energized. Not caffeinated, not hyped up on motivation, but genuinely alive. I bet it wasn't after you'd completed some task that you thought you should do. I bet it was when you were doing something that felt natural, something that flowed from who you are rather than who you think you need to be. Most of us have been conditioned to believe that energy comes from discipline, from pushing through, from forcing ourselves to be productive. We've been taught that if we're tired, we're lazy. If we lack motivation, we need to try harder. But this approach is like trying to drive a car with the handbrake on. You can press the gas pedal all you want, but you're fighting against your own system. The truth is, when you're living authentically, when your actions align with your values, when you're expressing your genuine nature instead of performing a role, energy becomes effortless. It flows naturally because you're not constantly swimming upstream against your own current. But here's where it gets tricky. Most of us don't even know what our authentic self looks like anymore. We've spent so many years adapting, conforming, trying to fit into boxes that weren't made for us, that we've lost touch with our own rhythm. We wake up tired because we're exhausted from being someone we're not. You spend 8 hours at a job that feels meaningless, pretending to care about things that don't matter to you. You come home and scroll through social media, comparing your behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. You fill your evenings with activities you think you should enjoy, or worse, with nothing at all, because you're too drained to figure out what you actually want to do. This isn't tiredness, this is spiritual exhaustion. This is what happens when your soul is starving while your schedule is full. And the most insidious part is that this kind of exhaustion disguises itself as physical tiredness. Your body responds to emotional and spiritual disconnection as if it were a physical threat. Your nervous system stays activated. Your sleep becomes restless. Your digestion suffers. Your immune system weakens. All because you're living in a constant state of misalignment. The modern world has set up a perfect storm for this kind of exhaustion. We're told to optimize everything, to be productive every moment, to always be improving, always be growing, always be doing more. But optimization without authenticity is just sophisticated self-betrayal. We've created lives that look successful on paper, but feel empty in practice. We chase goals that aren't even ours, trying to impress people we don't even like, buying things we don't need with money we don't have, all while wondering why we feel so drained. But here's what's fascinating. When you start living in alignment with who you actually are, when you stop performing and start being, something magical happens. Tasks that used to exhaust you become effortless. Conversations that used to drain you become energizing. Even challenges, even difficulties, don't leave you feeling depleted in the same way. This doesn't mean life becomes easy. It means life becomes yours. And when life is authentically yours, you have access to energy reserves you didn't even know existed. I've seen people completely transform their energy levels, not by changing their sleep schedule or their diet, though those things can help, but by changing how they show up in the world, by choosing authenticity over approval, by prioritizing alignment over achievement, by asking not, "What should I do?" but "What feels true?" The exhaustion you feel might not be telling you to rest more. It might be telling you to live more, to stop hiding behind the person you think you should be and start expressing the person you actually are. Your energy is not just fuel for productivity, it's feedback from your soul about whether you're on the right path. And right now, if you're constantly tired, if you're always running on empty, your soul might be trying to tell you something important. It might be saying that the life you're living isn't the life you were meant to live, that the person you're being isn't the person you were meant to be, that the energy you're missing isn't hidden in better habits or stronger willpower. It's hidden in the courage to be yourself. Because when you're truly being yourself, when you're living from your authentic center, rather than from external expectations, energy doesn't become something you have to manage. It becomes something that flows through you naturally, effortlessly, abundantly. But getting there requires something most people aren't willing to do. It requires looking honestly at the ways you've been betraying yourself, the ways you've been living someone else's life, the ways you've been choosing comfort over truth. It requires sitting with the uncomfortable realization that maybe the problem isn't that you need more energy. Maybe the problem is that you've been spending your energy on the wrong things for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to be truly alive. This isn't about making dramatic changes overnight. It's not about quitting your job tomorrow or burning your life to the ground. It's about starting to notice the subtle ways you abandon yourself throughout the day. The moments when you say yes when you mean no. The times when you perform enthusiasm for things that leave you cold inside. The conversations where you hide your real thoughts because you're afraid of judgment. Every time you choose conformity over authenticity, you leak energy. Every time you prioritize what others think over what feels true, you drain your own battery. And after years of this, after decades of this, you end up feeling tired in ways that sleep can't fix. But here's the thing about authenticity. It's not just about being honest with others. It's about being honest with yourself, about what actually energizes you versus what you think should energize you, about what brings you alive versus what looks good on social media, about what feels meaningful versus what feels impressive. Some people find energy in solitude, but they force themselves to be social because they think that's what healthy people do. Others are naturally social, but exhaust themselves trying to be independent because they've been told that needing others is weakness. Some people are energized by routine, others by variety. Some by creating, others by organizing. Some by helping, others by achieving. There's no universal formula for energy because there's no universal human. What drains one person completely might be exactly what another person needs to feel alive. But we've been so conditioned to follow the same playbook, to want the same things, to live the same way, that we've lost touch with our own unique energy signature. And this is where the real work begins, not in trying harder or sleeping more or taking more supplements, but in paying attention to what actually gives you life, in noticing when you feel most like yourself, in recognizing the difference between the tiredness that comes from effort and the tiredness that comes from resistance. When you're doing something that aligns with your nature, even if it's challenging, even if it's demanding, you don't feel drained afterward. You might feel physically tired, but there's a satisfaction, a sense of rightness, an energy that comes from being in flow with who you are. But when you're doing something that goes against your grain, even if it's easy, even if it's simple, it leaves you feeling empty because you're not just using energy, you're fighting against yourself while you do it. Most people never make this distinction. They assume all tiredness is the same. They think the solution is always rest, always recovery, always trying to build up more reserves. But sometimes the solution isn't more energy. Sometimes it's less resistance. Sometimes it's finally admitting that the life you've been trying to live isn't your life at all. That the goals you've been chasing don't actually matter to you. That the person you've been trying to be is exhausting because it's not who you are. This realization can be terrifying, because if you're not who you've been pretending to be, then who are you? If the life you've built isn't authentic, then what is? If the things you've been working toward don't actually fulfill you, then what will? But it can also be the most liberating moment of your life, because suddenly you're not fighting against yourself anymore. Suddenly you're not swimming upstream. Suddenly you have access to an energy source you didn't even know existed. The energy that comes from being yourself. The energy that comes from living your truth. The energy that comes from finally allowing yourself to exist as you actually are, instead of as you think you should be. You're not tired. You're just ready to come home to yourself. And once you do, you'll wonder how you ever survived living any other way. Because being yourself isn't just easier. It's the only way to truly be alive. So maybe it's time to stop asking how to get more energy and start asking why you're spending so much energy fighting against who you are. The answer might change everything.